me to briefly introduce myself. My name is Rui Jie, and my friends call me RJ. I'm from Malaysia, and I'm currently of my at the University of Warwick, taking Economics and Industrial Organization. I'm the head of speakers here at WAC, and I'm also your MC and moderator for today's event. Firstly, I would like to lay down some house rules. Please make sure that your mic is on mute during the sharing session to ensure that there's no external distraction during the event. Secondly, we highly encourage you all to turn your cameras on, and we like to see all your loving and friendly faces. Please allow me to outline the flow. We will first have Nhi, our Chief Coordinator, to give her opening remarks. Afterwards, we will have a discussion with our esteemed guest. And lastly, we will open the floor to a Q&A session. During the Q&A session, you can either ask questions through either unmuting your mic, asking directly, or you can simply pop the questions into the chat. Either way it works. And now I'd like to pass the mic to Nhi to give her opening remarks.
Thank you, RJ. Sorry once again for all the delays, everyone. So hello, everyone. Welcome to WAC's episode of Insights in 2022. My name is Nhi, and I'm the Chief Coordinator of the Warwick ASEAN Conference, otherwise known as WAC. So I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. And most notably, our heartfelt gratitude goes towards, of course, our esteemed speaker, Mr. Mirus Ponon, founder and chairperson of the Global Youth Advocates Network, for taking time off his busy schedule and joining us, I think, from the airport to share with us his experiences working as an active youth advocate, leader and change maker, not only in his home country, the Philippines, but with our region and rest of the world. Today's episode of Coffee Insights is particularly exciting, not only because it is our first episode of 2022, but because today's topic of youth advocacy is one particularly relevant to you, our delegates, who are mostly students pursuing a university education with the dream of creating a brighter future for yourselves, your family, perhaps your country, and maybe even the world. We all have a seed of change planted in us, but how do we nurture it and make growth? What can we as youth play in order to fight for a world we believe in? How can each of us contribute towards causes we are passionate about at an individual, communal, regional, even global level? Our main objective here at WAC has always been to uplift the youth of ASEAN and to amplify their voices. So much so that our main conference features a panel composed purely of young people who have managed to make a difference and are to this day making steps towards a better and brighter future. After all, who better to help us fellow youth like us who have already taken the step forward to make a change? So if by the end of today's episode, you feel as though not all your questions have been answered, or you feel inspired to explore more perspectives and opinions, do join us and continue the conversation at our main conference held at the University of Warwick on the 26th of February this year. Team Charting Our Future, the conference will be a full-day event featuring speaker panels, networking opportunities, and engagement sessions with representatives from the ASEAN themselves, all surrounding the topic of exploring what lies in the future of ASEAN, particularly in the context of a post-pandemic world. Ticket sales will begin at the end of this month, so do keep an eye out for our social media to ensure you remain notified. In the meantime, let's hear from Mirus as he shares about how he first got involved with activism, what motivates and drives him on the day-to-day, and how his journey has led him to found the Global Youth Advocates Network, which in 2021 alone was invited to get 117 events. My heartfelt thanks once again to Mirus for joining us, and to all our participants, thank you for tuning into Coffee Insights. Without further ado, I pass the floor back to RJ. Thank you.
Thank you, Nhi. And now I'd like to introduce our very special guest today, Mr. Mirus Ponon, founder and chairperson of the Global Youth Advocate Network. So he's currently taking out development studies and economics as a scholar at de La Salle University in hopes of becoming a development professional. Not just a student, Mirus is also in various such the National Youth Council member at WWF Philippines, president at Student Catholic Action DLSU, chairperson for active citizenship and global mobility at the Manila Youth Development Council, Philippine officer of the ASEAN University Student Council, National Youth Commission as one of its youth coaches, and as a resource person for already almost more than 350 events worldwide. And I suppose this one will be added to that list very soon. Mirus was also recognized a global leader by the We Are Family Foundation, one of the 10 outstanding scholars of the Philippines, and has represented Philippines in APEC, ASEAN, and United Nations. It takes a while when you have such an accomplished speaker in your midst. And without further ado, let's welcome Mirus Ponon. Hello, Mirus.
Thank you. Hello,
Hi.
do you hear me well?
Yes, thank you so
Hi.
much for joining us. It must be a packed schedule for you.
No, it's okay. You know, I really do apologize on behalf of the participants. Not in I'm in. And this is the first time I'm late. I've been to 400 engagements, and this is the first time that it would be in an airport. I'm off to the States, and I'm going to be in a fellowship. Again, apologies to all. It's so nice to meet you, and please take me to Warwick sometime.
Yes.
But yeah, again, so apologies, and it's so nice. Honestly, I'm genuinely happy when I get to interact with you. Though I know that your first impression of me is going to be an achiever of what my title is and what I have accomplished. But honestly, if I were to just give you a brief emphasis on how I want to present myself in front of you, I'm simply a Filipino youth advocate that came from poverty. And we'll talk about that later. That now just is really passionate about bringing change to the world. In a world full of stigmatism, in a world full of impossibilities and uncertainty, leaders shine through crisis, and I really do believe that leaders, there's really no limit. You know, no one is too young to lead, and to be an example to the youth, not just the Philippines, to like you is something that I adore and really do cherish. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Mirus. You've already been with such an inspirational beginning without even going into your personal life. So I think I will start off with asking what got you into activism and your drive for poverty, and also what is the end goal in activism for you?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. Activism was a word that I did not know I was 15. Why am I saying this? Because I never planned to be an activist. I never planned to have my course right now, which is development studies. All of this were not planned. You know, no, you don't hear anyone growing up and say, "Oh, I want to be an activist. I want to risk my life." You know, I lived in the Philippines. I was born in the Philippines. When it comes to poverty, I did experience that because my parents were the generation that was able to finish education. Education is actually a big problem in the Philippines, and my parents, both my mom and dad, were the first ones, both in their family, rarely has electricity, that was able to survive and was able to do their hard work and go to Manila, the capital of the Philippines, coming off a province. And so it was a small beginning. I grew up in Manila. I grew up in a rented place, and it would be surrounded with people of poverty. What's worse is there would always be fire, man-made fire. In Filipino, we call it sunog. So you expect I would expect every week, especially in March, because it's the season in March, and there would be fire, like houses burning every other week. And so you expect the pollution, you expect the people screaming. And what really touched me, my first why, I'm a person of whys. I believe that everything that we do should be catered to our whys. My first why was brought through my parents. Going back, we did live off those. Oh, thankfully, we weren't one of those. We weren't one of those houses that was by the fire would happen now and then. But we would be the ones that were to be expected to give immediately. But going back to my story, we were from small beginnings. But that also was the moment for me to understand that I was a person of privilege. And that was where I saw that poverty was bigger. I may be, at that time I was, growing up, you would ask yourself, why can't I go out of the home? Why can't I do this and that? Why am I in the public school? Why can't I treat? There's worse when it comes to levels in the Philippines. Extreme poverty is present. And so I understood my point of privilege. And that was when I asked myself this question: why is this happening? And if this continues to happen, who will be the one to solve this problem? Why hasn't been there someone to solve that problem. So fast forward, of course, parents would say, "What? Oh, so if you were to, you know, growing up, we had big dreams, and people would say, "Oh, you do this, you do that. When you study school, you be a leader in school." But that was my second hurdle. You may think that I've been a leader from, from whenever, ever since I really was sparked by that enthusiasm. But no, I wasn't a leader. I wasn't an honor student as well. I was an average individual, and that was when I saw my second why. What do I mean by this? Because exclusivity was present. What do teachers see? If you were a teacher, what would you see? That what would you see in an individual, in a young person that were to be, it's an individual that would be extroverted. Number two would be an individual that would be intelligent or gifted anywhere else. But the problem is I wasn't any of that. And so I experienced exclusivity. I was told that I couldn't leave. And so it forced me to go to volunteering outside and to non-profit organizations. And it was also very cruel because I was I was volunteering and people 10, 15 years older than me. And the form of capitalism, especially in the Philippines, is big. The genuineness is something, and volunteerism is politicized in the country because we're a corrupt nation, and we think the main stigma when it comes to volunteering in the country was that people just decide to volunteer for what? For fame, for ego, for the resume. And those were barriers that I had to overcome. What gave me that why? What gave me that passion to become an active was when I was given an opportunity. It did not stop me to continue volunteering. That was where I understood why volunteering was important. And for me, the biggest takeaway of being a volunteer, and that people, I believe, lack nowadays, is that we tend to volunteer with incentive. We tend to volunteer with something to get in return, which shouldn't be. Because if there's one word that I want to affiliate volunteerism is, it's selflessness. Essentially means doing the things that should be done without expecting anything. And so I was given the opportunity to be an officer in the ASEAN University Student Council Union after I graduated high school, after I overcame uncertainty. And it was very ironic because I was given that post. I was given that post 2 weeks before entering university. What does that mean? I was given the post of becoming the Philippine officer of all student unions in the Philippines without even entering college yet. And I actually skipped my orientation back then. And so it was a challenge. But I'm experiencing, but going back to my wife, after experiencing poverty, after seeing the exclusivity that was present, these two had led me to become an activist. But I really would prefer a term called youth advocate, which I would define as someone that changes what is to what should be, always being proactive. And we tend to always see the wrong. It's good to be critical, but what we tend to not have and not do as the youth, because for a lot of reasons, it's action. We tend to be very critical. You're in critical, you're in. Oh, I've been there. I haven't been to the UK or Europe. They're all, but what we really lack is action. And so, after being elected, we had to do a project, and that was when I mixed these two whys of mine combined. I understood that there was a need, and there was exclusivity. There was exclusivity in terms of people not being able to lead because they lack the experience and age and genuineness when it comes to voting. Get with anyone, whether they're pure or not. And so that's when Youth Advocates for the Philippines started, which was meant to be a safe space for those that, regardless of their age, regardless of their experience, regardless of what their views are in politics, regardless of what they can do or not. And so we accepted them, whether they were genuine or not, whether they were resume or credit grabbers, or whether they were intentional or both. Our goal wasn't, goal is to find those that are actually pure. Our goal is, of course, to reshift the perception of volunteerism, of advocacy and activism in the country, regardless of age, regardless of all the things that I aforementioned. It seems so simple, I explained it to you as if it was done in a day and all, but it took some time. And so as I was being introduced by Rui, we never anticipated to go global. After a year, we really grew in COVID, and after representative, I was able to be in stakeholder meetings with the ASEAN Secretariat, and I was able to receive a lot of feedback. If there's one, going back to give you a briefer, it's I lost what I was about to say, but going back.
With the ASEAN
Oh
Secretary.
no, I got it. I
Yeah.
got that. I would always ask myself this: why the hell? Why am I being invited? Why am I and I guess the simple answer people give me is that I know persuasive, I'm influential, and I speak in reality. I don't be I'm not the type of person to really be stuck in an echo chamber and be very with the barrier, speak with the barrier. So so I was in a stakeholder meeting full of senior officials. I was saying true things. You aren't prioritizing the youth. The Myanmar situation. If I was, and gave an impression to me. I was actually, ever since then, I wasn't invited for another meeting with them. But yeah, I stood my ground, and the stakeholders like UNICEF and all believed in me, and it led me to scale it up to the ASEAN Youth Advocates Network. Because in events, especially when it comes to politicians, government, we're used as a prop to just present inclusivity just because of but it shouldn't be that way. And so we started in 2020, which is it sounds easy, but I'll tell you this: most businesses went small in 2020, and so for us to go big and expand to 10 countries was hard. But I guess our power of storytelling, not just myself, but our pool of volunteers, has led to the ASEAN Youth Advocates Network to now be in demand, to win these awards left and right, to have this recognition, to be in media, and now be, the organization that people want to, which is the reason why I'm going to the US, because we are expanding in North America.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a journey. If you look at the time frame, it's so small. In 20, I'm just turning 21. And yeah, the story of advocacy, now with the vision to make advocacy a lifestyle in the world, is present. So yeah, that's my story. And I want to go, and this is where we go and specify. I'm sorry, Roy, I'm giving you a hard time as a moderator. Now you are going to scramble for questions. Where do I go? Where do I go?
No, I think I need a good brief of like what you've been through and your whole experience. Give us a clearer picture of why would you come out with AYAN. And I think it's also very cool for all of us to see how AYAN has grown into not just a network that's kept within the ASEAN region, but also the whole global. As you have mentioned, went global in 2020, I assume.
2021, yeah.
2021, okay, yeah. So I think moving on from that would be how did it happen? With the pandemic affecting youths, when youths are supposed to go to school, they're supposed to receive the knowledge, gain access to mentorship, resources, grow up. But then with the pandemic hitting, and then youths are kept at home, right? So how has AYAN operation changed to suit the current needs of youth?
Yeah, going back to my story, we were physical, back, but AYAN started online ever since. We would go physical, but going back, 2019 was when Youth Advocates for the Philippines started. The pandemic hit us, the lockdowns and all, March 2020. This is where, virtual classes came about. And then we decided to launch the ASEAN Youth Advocates Network on ASEAN Day, August 8th of 2020. And so we really understood that we would go online, but we also had to prepare to go grassroots. What I experienced and what I learned, because I'm a very observational person, and my face-to-face, going back in our experience, I was a freshman student that started a nonprofit that was registered with the government. So we had expectations. So what I would do is and my weekends would always be org work. And it was hard to mobilize back then. And so I use COVID as the opportunity to have a bridge for relationships and more time when it comes to prepare for grassroots work. And so we really did start to mobilize. We delegated very well. For a lot of hurdles in the run, it's hard to understand 10 cultures in one meeting with English as a hard medium at times. But yeah, we gave them the vision. We really focus on our mission and vision at the end of the day. If I were to give you a quote, advocacy is your biggest experience is where you will find your advocacy. Why? Advocacies are personal. You know, someone that is advocating for mental health probably experienced something that or she or he experienced that they would want people not to experience the same way. So going back to your question, we did start online, yes, but our goal was to always prepare for the new normal, to always adapt. And so, for example, last year the chair was Brunei, and our team at Brunei was able um, to organize the ASEAN Youth Forum, the official youth event of the chairmanship of ASEAN with the Prime Minister and the government of Brunei. And when we had to prepare for that, and us as as our other country chapters were still growing, we provided aid for them while they were there. So yeah, we really did a lot of delegation. We did a lot of trust. Trust issues can be key in, especially when, self-interest does come along, which is evident, but you're able to find solutions, you're able to stay adaptive, and we had to make decisions at the end of the day. What I would share to you is that, we, the youth, we also are scared of being wrong at times, but we tend to forget that it's us, um, these fears, it's these misunderstandings, it's these hurdles that actually give us the opportunity to grow, to be better leaders, advocates, and persons thereof. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, I think I did see online that you guys mobilized over 900 youth advocate just last year. And I think that's a great statistics to begin with, and also to unite the whole ASEAN together. And so yeah, still back, I'm still keen, like you were mentioning how Brunei sharing, so the health forum. And so with ASEAN operating across ASEAN, beginning the ASEAN Malaysia, ASEAN Indonesia, how do you maintain this good relationship between the branches? And what are the challenges faced throughout this journey?
Yeah, there's a lot of hurdles. First and foremost, again, diversity. A lot of people try to avoid diversity. You may be this exchange student from a university and would say, "Oh, I don't want this friend group. I'll go to another one." But the thing is, what a lot of people tend to realize that diversity, people will always be different. So let's embrace it. And so there were a lot of that. We have country chapters. We're present in the 10 country chapters. Our Lao chapter actually just had their first event today. And of course, there would be cultural misunderstandings. English is a barrier for ASEAN. It's really big. It sounds so cliche, but it is. But and of course, practical. They have their own workloads, clubs, differently. Some prefer dogs, some prefer Facebook, WhatsApp, and all that. So there has to be a decision. There has to be a consensus, and there has to be sacrifice when it comes to understanding all of that. I would lie if I told you it was very easy. We had a lot of replications. We had councils that were removed all entirety because there were times where some of our groups, some of our chapters were doing things that we did not know, and not to know that only know for names, for money, for personal use, for profit and all, which is it our mandate. So these things are present, and we have to be, we have to adapt, and we have to oversee. And so in our organizational structure, what we did to refine all of that is understanding that ASEAN is founded in the Philippines. We have administrators or supervisors per office, per chapter, that would oversee the progress and would serve as an accountant to these chapters. So we have, so that's what we would forgot the word. In accounting, there's an accountant and there's one more. What's that? auditor. Yeah, so
Audit.
there's an accountant, there's someone that audits. So we're very strict on that, and we make sure that it's all Filipinos, and we explain it to them why, because it's how we
Yeah.
we don't want things to be bureaucratic as well. A lot of people hate bureaucracy. When it comes to projects, some people want to just, I want to do a project without doing these things. But yeah, there has to be compromise in every situation. And once back to being aligned same mission and vision, you really have to. And so whether we would state our mission vision every meeting, but it would sound boring, we have to, because it's hard to mobilize people that are not aligned with the mission. It's our foundation. It's the foundation of everything. There would be experiences where you would see someone hurt in someone, trying to cancel someone just to be a higher officer, and all that. These things happen, and so through experience, will get used to it. You're ready, and we understand that despite multiple protocols, we can have 100 administrators and have mentors or tutors for a volunteer that we have, but we still balance that with the trust and the transparency and relationship that we aim to have to these individuals. So I hope you answered your question. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I did. Well, I mean, with that big amount of people, for WAC, it's already such a pain. And then, you're handling across countries, across with different language. And so it's such a huge network. I'm pretty sure you also meet different kind of people along the way. So one question would be, more generally, what is the problem you would see in ASEAN youth this day? Or like, what is the most urgent issue to solve? Yeah. Or that
Why is Mian laughing? No, problems of ASEAN, I guess it's really on engagement and participation. The reason why we did the scale to Southeast Asia, let's scale, immediately. No, we had to plan for it. We had to see if it was possible and the hurdles that would come. There are countries in ASEAN that are active when it comes to youth engagement and participation, active citizenship, social responsibility, and all that. But there are a lot of countries who aren't. Indonesia is very active. The Philippines, they're the ones. I've been to multiple ASEAN events, and it's usually them that would really be very noisy. Yeah, at times not generalize, not stereotype. But yeah, and based on my experience, please don't quote me on that. But yeah, going back, there are engagement and participation is something that is present, that is not present in a lot of things. So we had to do a lot of research. We had to do focus group discussions. We really had to understand them and to, again, go back to and adjust and fill a compromise their needs. So for example, in Brunei, I remember there was this individual who was in our meeting that started to pray. Catholic, and I'm Catholic, but it doesn't mean that it has to be that way. I understand if ASEAN is not Catholic, the Philippines is the only Christian country in Southeast Asia. There are a lot of Buddhists and Muslims, and so we had, again, there's interfaith prayers that we of course place along the way, and yeah, it's really on understanding and being on check with them. Because at the end of the day, it's not just the organization's growth. They're not peasants, they're servants. They're servants, should leaders that should be equipped to face the challenges of the modern times. So, yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, like you brought up religion and races. These are the diversity we have in ASEAN. And also, you also mentioned engagement. And with all of these, I think I will go into a more serious question. It's also a question that I've been pondering upon. So like, I understand that, as the whole of ASEAN, we practice non-intervention policy because we are, okay, just by an explanation to our participants who might not be familiar, non-intervention policy means a principle of international law that restrict the ability of outside nations to interfere with the internal affairs of another nation. So yeah, my question is, do you think that ASEAN should rethink this decade-long policy? And us as youth, we're rising up really soon to grow up, and then we're gonna take over our countries, to be adults and running our countries soon. Should we change?
Okay, that's a great question. My professor would say this as a development student, as someone in social sciences. The perfect answer is two words. It depends. It depends on the situation. But I believe, honestly, that non-intervention may be very so repetitive and may restrict the opportunity of what collaboration is in totality. You know, we ask these questions. I ask you guys questions for us to answer this. As ASEAN progressed, as the mandate had been used exponentially for the welfare of all. If I were to answer it, it's no. There's the opportunity of a lot of things. What's the purpose of us being divided in classes? The three pillars of ASEAN. If you're going to restrict them all with non-intervention, so for me, of course, a lot of policy making has to be placed into it. There may be a time, there may be a time where non-intervention is important. There may be a time where it should be not implemented at times, especially rights issue, LGBTQ community, and
Yeah.
because in 10 countries in 10 alphas expect clashing to occur, expect intervention to occur, but that's the nature of what ASEAN is. If we're not here for a consensus, why is ASEAN here in the first place? And so, given all these things aside, I really do believe that non-intervention is, some countries are really strong, but there are measures which should be used and relate to, and there should be certain circumstances that would not have the non-intervention policy. So that's how I'd answer the question. But going back, as a food for thought, the UN also has this. They may not speak it out loud, but we've seen COP26, we've seen these big quote unquote conferences that will change the world, quote unquote. But yeah, maybe. But once you get to dive into it, what is fresh capitalism is there? It just gives you, a breath of relief or disappointment at times.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely a hard question to answer, a tricky one, especially for us. But hopefully, if ever will come a day where things will ease out, I hope that it will help the ASEAN to grow bigger than it is, right? And okay, coming towards the very end of our session here, I was thinking to ask whether have any thoughts for us as university students who are abroad, far away from ASEAN, but we would still like to care and still like to do something for our home countries. Yeah.
Yeah. First and foremost, you're already doing that step. Thank you for having this Warwick ASEAN conference in your university. It's very rare. You may see left and right, but it's not. Is it enough? It's definitely not. There's a lot of things that can be refined, and you are one of the pioneers with this. You may have multitude of reasons to be here, whether you were forced by a friend to join here, whether you are one of ASEAN, you're one with us, whether and you see ASEAN as when it comes to one of the rising economies, maybe you're an international student, who knows, but regardless, I hope that you take ASEAN in a personal way. Again, going back, our advocacy should always be personal, because for me, it's my nationality, and it's like not online, but the individuals that are most affected are whom? The most vulnerable, the ones that are in poverty, those that are misrepresented. And so know that these dialogues are very important. And, of course, ethical considerations should be placed, and you should really just feel free. This is something that I also want to point out that I am learning at and not an expert at, is always be genuine yourself and make connections. To give you a scenario, there was this multimillionaire that wanted me to endorse him in our organization. He may be not a politician, but essentially what he wants is gratification and fame and publicity and all that. Yes, you may have perks, but at the end of the day, your morals will be there at the end of the day. So know and everything that we learn and everything that we experience and the people that we are with. I hope that we have the open mind, the open heart, and understanding, and to living and discovering what ASEAN is for us. Is it merely a course? Is it merely a interest? Or is it something that is ASEAN an entity, or a passion that we should have to, especially to those that are most affected? So yeah, these are food for thought questions that I would ask. I also would like to give these questions. Is leadership becoming capitalized? What about in ASEAN? Is ASEAN capitalized by the countries? These things are present, and but these questions aren't meant to have war, or to have to cancel each other out, but for meaningful exchange. And again, embracing diversity is important. You may think that you can get away with it, but you won't. But it doesn't mean we have to fake it till we make it. I hope, again, going back, I'm circling this through and through. We really should have an open mind and open to the things this and that, but in our lives as individuals that at the end of the day have certain citizenships, nationalities, but at the end of the day are individuals that share a common goal. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I'm pretty sure we've learned so much from you today, from your sharings, from your insights, and showing us how capable and limitless we youth can be. And I'm sure we have learned a lot about AYAN as well as the direction of youth advocacy and activism in these days. I think I want to move on to the Q&A question now, and I do see a few questions in the chat box, and so I think I will just curate it for them. Okay, so firstly, from Isabel, she asked, how can being an activist boost our professional career progression and success? How do we balance both? I think, yeah, probably in the direction of time management, I guess. Yeah, like if you were to pick up, like all the being an activist, really of time we have put in there, and also how would that help to boost our, probably in terms of, career progression and our future success?
Yeah, to answer that question, thank you so much first for that question. It's a great question, if I may add. It does boost, first you're interacting with people. Our world was meant for interaction. It was meant for relationships, not just, not just as lovers, but as individuals that would want to share a common goal. You look at the world to begin with. That's how we spark connections, and that's how we use our strength in numbers in a meaningful and more impactful way. So it boosts a lot. Get to meet a lot of people. You get to understand the needs and concerns of society. That is the reason why I took development studies. You get to see different perspectives. You get to understand the intentions of individuals. You're essentially someone that's taking psychology, taking communications, taking everything. It's not, these are lifelong learning. It's being in a corporate setting and just fit, and just do one task of one simple task. This is something that we're free to do, that is voluntary, and that really tests our morals and our capabilities and how we see our world and where we want it to be. Is development, is sustainability something that I will contribute in or not? These are questions that we ask. So how do we balance both? Of course, it really does depend on your goal. I guess the best term for this would be, how are you going to be social responsible? You're someone who rants that wants a better nation. You're someone who rants that there should be a better world. But what are you doing when it comes to achieving this? And so you may be in school, that's understandable. You may have a lot of family chores. You may be experiencing mental issues. I understand the COVID-19 pandemic is difficult, and we understand it as well. We're empathetic when it comes to that. But how am I, for you, going to up as a social responsible citizen? How are you as an active citizen that is important for better governance and participation of everyone towards a common goal? So it does depend, of course. Again, there's a reason why democracy was made for some countries. And, again, It really does. At the end of the day, it depends on you, on how you view and see your society. Thank you, Isabel.
Yeah. So, can we, Haley, are you there? I think, do you want to ask your own question or do you want me to curate it for you?
Sure. I just have a bit of a cough, so
Oh.
so hi Mirus. Thank you so much for like the speech, the talk. It was really insightful. So I have a question. I'm also quite involved with youth activism in Malaysia, back in my home country. So many youth activists in Malaysia actually face persecution for their activities. So do you have any similar experiences as a youth activist? This might be like, because a bit ignorant. I don't really know how youth activism in the Philippines works, but do you have any experience with facing persecution, or if not, do you have any thoughts about it?
Yeah. Hey, first and foremost, don't feel that your question is wrong. It's actually a great question. I remember that you're from Malaysia. We have a chapter in Malaysia, and the people that I've met from Malaysia are all amazing people. They're very kind. Okay, going back to the question, yeah, which is a crazy. There's this thing called red tagging. Being an act, we see it. We saw it in Thailand. We saw it um, in Myanmar. We saw it in a lot of countries. But yeah, it's very present in ours. It's called red tagging. Some are actually blackmailed. Some are, you know, some are, some really get to experience the harsh, um, the harsh ignorance of human rights. These things happen when it comes to us. I see, it actually starts. There's a cycle that happens. There's a cycle that happens that starts with the family. The Philippines, I would meet so many that would say parents that would hinder individuals from being active, from participating in something. First and foremost, is being an activist wrong? It's definitely not. There's a reason why we are activists to begin with, because we want a cause to be successful, because we're representing something bigger than ourselves. It's not only high, it's deep. And so for us to change the cycle and change the stigma is something present. The Philippines may want to look at our president. I won't mention his name, but he has done a lot of human rights wrongdoings, for lack of a better word. And I had friends that were jailed and all that, and so I actually all that. But thankfully, I have a dad that's very supportive. But yeah, it's hard. We have, and on my end, as someone that is leading a youth network, to youth being discouraged really is a boundary for us, but we also not see as a hindrance, but as a challenge, because we don't escape reality. We try our best to change the current reality into a better one. And so whether it's not being vocal in social media because your account may be terminated, or may be seen by an official, whether it's to share your thoughts, whether it's having unified statements as an organization, these things are, but before you have some list, really takes, it sounds so simple, but I believe it takes so much, and it brings a lot of positivity in that industry. So thanks so much for your questions, and I hope you learned a thing or two. Thank you.
Right. I think we're a bit running short of time as well, so I'm just gonna cut it to maybe one last question from the chat. I think I'll pick Sichi's one. So she asked, in this day and internships seen be a definite checkbox one should tick off in university, what do you think could motivate youth to volunteer? How should organizations reshape and reform their organizations to make their cause fundamentally compelling to ASEAN youth of today? Ooh, a long one.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question. But before I answer that, to everyone who asked, I would love to answer your question. There's now a time to plug. I'm someone that always accepts messages. Again, you're free to message me on Facebook, and anywhere. I am someone that really does this. I'm a call center agent at times. I always try to answer and talk to you guys, because we tend to have, a lot of us tend to not have that openness to speak. While you're speaking with someone that you just known today, you're free to message me anything, free to rant, and share your thoughts or ask questions. So to those that I haven't answered, I apologize. But again, I give you my contact information and trust to communicate. I don't want to be someone that you would not see after an hour, and just leave. A speaker that was late that would leave. I don't want to be that individual. But okay, going back to the question. Yes, it's a checkbox. I agree. How do we motivate the youth to volunteer? How do we motivate the youth to volunteer? I guess the simple answer is to find their why. When it was physical, it was easy. What we would do is to them to go immerse, to go to these communities and actually get to know these individuals. I believe once we are researchers, we're students, we look at statistics, we see the poverty rate, we see the statistics of development, of the economy. It sounds great and all that, but going back to poverty, for example, once you get to meet someone out of the millions of the victims of the coronavirus, I believe that perspective of yours does change eventually. This one way is just to rediscover what your why is. Whether we would do an event, movie screening. There's a lot of ways. There isn't one that is perfect, but there are a lot of opportunities to really immerse themselves with. Whether it's a movie about climate change, whether it's you sharing your story, whether it's you giving a post or testimonies that would really encapsulate a perspective that they haven't seen. In the Philippines, what really disappoints me is that we doesn't know the perspective of things, and we would call them bobo or that's in Filipino, and that in English it's stupid, it's mean. But no, that shouldn't be the case. Our goal is to educate them. Our goal is to give them that perspective that they may have not had the privilege to see through yet. And so going back to that, there's a lot of ways how we can immerse them. And at the end of the day, you can try your best. It won't be a 100% success rate. Me right now, I don't know how many are listening. There's talks that I've been into 10,000 individuals, but how many are actually are listening? And the next question is, how many are actually going to convert all these sharings into action? It's a small margin. So you really won't hit them all, but once you're passionate and once you really want to achieve the goal, you continue to do it. And once you're really passionate of what you do, you're really
It's all right.
Scared of answers. My flight maybe. No, it's not there. But yeah, I'm going back. Man, I was in a great rhythm already. I was about to, you should have cued the motivational musical. But yeah, going back, there's a lot of ways how we really can influence the youth. It won't be a 100% success rate, but we achieve burnout. At the end of the day, as long as we tried our best, as long as you gave an effort to influence, to persuade someone, I believe your job as an activist is done. Not all campaigns are going to be successful. Not all volunteers in my organization are going to leave that would surely care for ASEAN. In all my engagements, not everyone gets to be listened and inspired to. But what matters is you continuing and your passion still continuously evolving, not just for your career as an activist, not just for your career as whatever your profession may be, that is starting or is continuing to be a conscious human being. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. And I think we hope that I think that's the end, and we hope that this very first episode of Coffee Insights this year has been an inspiring one. And we thank you, Mirus, for taking your time off busy schedule, joining us Saturday evening at the airport. Yeah. Additionally, and we also like to extend a huge thanks to all the one participant, all the questions, and we really appreciate everyone joining despite the time zone differences. So before we let all of you go, can I invite all of you to turn on your cameras so we can take a group photo together? Yep, maybe remove the spotlight. Okay, wait. Are we ready? I'll just count. Yeah. Okay. So, maybe more of us to turn on the cameras. Okay, if it's inconvenient, it's fine. Okay, I will just do a countdown then. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Cheese. Okay, great. I'm done. So much. Right. So further on, we really value your feedbacks and would love to hear from you regarding our events today and what you'd like to hear from us in the future. So please check our chat box and fill out our feedback form so that we can continue to improve in future edition. And also we have also flagged Mirus's contact in the chat box, his Instagram and LinkedIn. So, feel free to ask him, hit him up if you have more questions regarding youth activism. And last but not least, do follow on Instagram, Facebook updates and notifications for future events. Tag us on any pictures or stories you may have taken today as well. Please also tune in for our ASEAN Conference 2022 that will be happening on the 26th of February, just this year, in a month's time. It will be in person, and we really look forward to showcase a very, very diverse ASEAN panel this year here in Warwick. And we'll be opening our registration soon, so look forward and look out to it. And this is your MC, Rui Jie, signing off, and we hope to see you in our next episode of Coffee Insights. Thank you so much for joining.